3 radiant suns drifted across the violet sky as Princess Lyra stood before the palace's towering crystal windows. Their blended light danced across her amethyst skin, reflecting faint shift of emotion she did not bother to hide. Curiosity, unease, and a quiet resignation of someone raised to honor duty above desire. Below her, a massive landing pad, etched with ancient Valkyrie runes, shuddered as a foreign ship descended. Its design was boxy, metallic, and undeniably human. Exactly what she had been dreading. So it begins, she thought. Today, she would meet the man chosen to become her husband. The Valkyrie Empire, rulers of this sector for millennia, had built a civilization on discipline, telekinetic mastery, and scientific brilliance. Their cities floated above luminous oceans, and their knowledge bent nature itself. They were elegant, tall, and composed. Everything humans were not. Humans were newcomers, barely 60 years into interstellar travel. Compared to the ageless Valkyrie, they were impulsive, loud, emotional, and, most annoyingly, unpredictable. So why marry one? Because her father, Emperor Theros, believed alliances must be sealed with more than ink. Lyra inhaled slowly, letting the cool, psionic-charged air of the palace calm her. She had trained her entire life to serve the Empire. If her marriage kept the peace, she would not resist it. But she did not have to like it. The throne room doors opened. Human delegates entered in stiff suits, shoes clicking awkwardly on the reflective marble floor. Lyra scanned them with the detached interest of scientists studying an unusual specimen. Then she saw him. He didn't walk like the others. He didn't look starstruck by the glowing walls or bowed ceilings. He simply moved, fluid, quiet, assured. Jake Morrison of the Human Federation, an aide announced. He bowed, perfectly measured, neither groveling nor arrogant. When he raised his head, calm gray eyes met Emperor Theros's gaze directly. His voice was smooth but controlled. Your Majesty, thank you for receiving us. May this meeting be the first step toward enduring peace between our peoples. Lyra blinked. No nervous stutter. No wide-eyed awe. Not even the telltale twitch humans showed when trying to hide fear. Interesting, she thought despite herself. Later, during their private introduction walk through the palace gardens, where bioluminescent flowers from dozens of systems grew in delicate spirals, Jake asked genuine questions. Not diplomatic niceties, but thoughtful inquiries. What purpose do these vines serve? How old is that stone monument? Why do the petals of this flower shift color when touched? Lyra found herself answering, at first out of politeness, then out of intrigue. He was absorbing every detail, not faking his interest, but genuinely wanting to understand. You study us closely, she said at last. Understanding removes fear, Jake replied with an easy smile. And respect grows from understanding. His sincerity unsettled her more than arrogance would have. Over the next weeks, Jake moved through palace life like a man determined not to offend. He learned the Valkyrie language with surprising speed, respecting its layered tones and telepathic undertones. He bowed when expected, stood when required, and endured rituals that frustrated even lifelong nobles. Servants adored him. Advisors approved of him. Courtiers whispered that Lyra was fortunate. Even Lyra began to soften. She discovered he could tell captivating stories about Earth. Skies holding only one sun. Seas stretching so far the horizon disappeared. Winds that smelled of salt and rain instead of psionic energy. One evening, he mentioned casually, I used to fly military patrols. But when she probed, he changed the subject politely but firmly. He hit something. She sensed it. The only hint of his other life was a sword mounted in his quarters. A dark, glass-like blade with no energy source she could detect. A family keepsake, he had said lightly. But the weapon felt wrong. Not archaic. Dangerous. Still, he never touched it. Never mentioned it again. The wedding arrived under a golden dusk, as all 3 suns aligned low beneath the horizon. Thousands witnessed the ceremony. Lyra wore the shimmering silver robes of her ancestors. Jake wore human ceremonial black. Their vows, spoken in both languages, echoed through the grand hall. Jake's hands were steady. His voice never faltered. He treated the moment not as duty but as something sacred. The feast lasted until dawn. Through every greeting, every ritual toast, every dance, Jake behaved with perfect composure. Polite, gentle, respectful, exactly what everyone hoped for. And yet, sometimes Lyra caught a flicker in his eyes. Something distant, something calculating, something that didn't fit the gentle man he presented to the world. But the look vanished as quickly as it came. Months passed. Life settled into calm routine. Jake studied culture, history, law. He meditated with palace monks. He carried trays for servants despite their protests. Court whispered that he was the ideal consort, supportive, unobtrusive. No one suspected the truth. Not Lyra, not the advisors, not the emperor, certainly not the Valkyrie generals. No one realized the quiet human prince was living a lie. No one imagined the decorative sword on the wall would one day ignite. And no one foresaw how quickly the galaxy would change. Because 6 months after the wedding, peace shattered, and Jake Morrison, the gentle diplomat, would no longer have the luxury of pretending. Morning light filtered to the palace skylights as Lyra reviewed trade reports in her private office. The rhythmic hum of the building's psionic engines usually soothed her, but today her nerves felt strangely unsettled, like the universe was holding its breath. She didn't know why, not until the door burst open. Thero, her father's senior aide, usually composed to the point of arrogance, stumbled inside, face pale, hands trembling around a datapad. "Princess," he choked out, "you must see this. Now." Lyra stood instantly, dread coiling in her chest. She took the datapad. Her world tilted. 3 Valkyrie colonies, gone. Not conquered, not occupied. Wiped out, millions dead, entire cities burned to ash. Planetary shields ripped apart like paper. The enemy, the Krell supremacy. They had been dormant for years. A coalition of 6 brutal warrior species, known for their savage expansion. The Valkyrie believed the Krell feared them. That respect, or terror, kept them quiet. Clearly, they had been wrong. Lyra didn't walk to the throne room. She ran. Inside, chaos reigned. Commanders shouted over each other. Holograms flickered with red alerts. And her father stood at the center, looking like a man who had aged decades in a day. Jake was there too, standing silently in the corner as usual, a shadow no one noticed. Commander Zephin, the head of the fleet, slammed his fist on the war table. "We strike back immediately. Deploy the psionic battalions. Show them Valkyrie superiority." But every minute brought new reports. The Krell weren't just strong. They were prepared. They had evolved. Their ships could dampen Valkyrie telekinesis. Their plasma batteries tore through Valkyrie armor like cloth. Every tactic the Empire had relied on for centuries suddenly failed. "What are our options?" Emperor Theros asked, voice tight. The generals offered the same strategies that had worked in ancient wars, but were useless now. Lyra felt a presence move beside her. Jake. His expression was unreadable, calm, calculating, disturbingly focused. The Emperor surprised everyone when he turned to him. "Prince Jake," Theros said, "what do you think?" A ripple of disbelief passed through the room. Humans didn't advise Valkyrie war councils. Humans were considered simplistic. Jake stepped forward slowly, each movement precise. "With respect, Your Majesty," he said softly, "prepare to defend your core worlds." "You suggest retreat?" Zephin spat. "Cowardice?" "I suggest realism," Jake answered, voice still level. "The Krell have planned this for years. They're moving faster than expected. The outer colonies are lost." The silence afterward was thick. Zephin scoffed loudly. "What does a human know of Valkyrie warfare? You flew supply ships and danced at diplomatic gatherings. Leave strategy to real warriors." Jake didn't react, not outwardly, but Lyra noticed a faint twitch of his jaw. A clue, a crack, something she would understand only later. That night, sleep refused to come. Lyra wandered the quiet halls until she saw a faint glow from Jake's quarters. She hesitated only a second before pushing the door open. Her breath caught. Jake stood before his wall-mounted sword, the dark, glassy blade she had always assumed was ceremonial. but now it pulsed softly, as though answering a call only it understood. Jake's hand hovered inches above it, trembling. "Jake," she whispered. He turned, and Lyra stepped back involuntarily. Gone was a gentle husband who spoke softly and studied flowers. In his place stood someone colder, someone heavy with hidden gravity, like a star that had collapsed inward. Zephyr was right about one thing. Jake said quietly, "I have been performing." Lyra's pulse quickened. Performing? The Harmless prince. He gave a small, humorless smile. The attentive diplomat. The soft-spoken husband. He finally closed his hand around the sword. The room exploded with blue light. The blade roared awake, humming with an energy she felt in her bones. The walls vibrated. The air ionized. Lyra stumbled back, eyes wide. "Jake, what is that?" "A sky reaver," he answered, "forged for humanity's deadliest unit." He lifted the weapon with ease. The light reflected in his suddenly sharp, dangerous eyes. There are only 12 of these blades in existence. He looked directly into her soul, and 12 people trained to wield them. Lyra's heart hammered. "You were one of them." "I am one of them," he corrected. "We don't retire. We disappear." The calmness of his tone terrified her more than shouting ever could. He turned the blade, letting its blue light trail across the room like living fire. "For 8 years, I was part of humanity's most elite special operations force. They call us," he exhaled, as though accepting something inevitable, "the 12. Lyra stared, not at the sword, not at the glow, but at the stranger standing in front of her, wearing her husband's face. "How?" she breathed. "How did no one know?" "Because diplomacy was my mission," Jake answered simply. "And I wanted to believe I could be that man, the one who likes poetry, who helps servants, who has a quiet life." He looked away. "But the Krell won't allow that. Not anymore." Lyra felt the weight of a new, terrible truth. Jake had not married into the Valkyrie Empire. He had been placed there, not as a pawn, not as a diplomat, as a weapon waiting for the moment he might be needed. The blue glow dimmed as he deactivated the Reaver, but the shadows it cast remained inside her. Lyra swallowed hard. "What are you going to do?" Jake met her gaze, this time, not with cold calculation, but with the calm resolve of a man stepping back into a life he never truly left. "What I was trained for," he said. "War is coming, Lyra, and your empire is not prepared." He walked past her, sword in hand. "Tomorrow, everything changes." Dawn had barely touched the horizon when the palace erupted into anxious movement. Alarms echoed through marble corridors. Diplomats hurried with pale faces, and guards rushed toward the command center. The Krell were no longer a distant threat. They were a storm closing in fast. Lyra walked quickly beside Jake, her heart thudding with questions she still wasn't ready to ask. He moved with a different rhythm now, quieter, sharper, purposeful. For months he had existed like a gentle ripple in palace life. Now he moved like a blade. When they stepped into the war chamber, Emperor Duros, council members, and military commanders looked exhausted. Reports floated holographically above the table, each one a fresh disaster. "For more colonies have fallen overnight," General Dorian said grimly. "The Krell are bypassing fortified sectors, hitting population centers first." "They are not fighting to conquer," Zephyr growled. "They're fighting to erase us." Jake stepped to the side wall, arms crossed, expression unreadable. He did not interrupt. "Not yet." The Emperor rubbed his temples. "What are our defensive projections?" "Bleak," whispered an advisor. "If they continue at this speed, they will reach the homeworld in less than 2 weeks." A silence settled. Heavy, suffocating. The roast straightened. His eyes locked onto Jake. "Prince Jake," he said softly, "you asked for permission last night to contact Earth." Jake nodded. "I did. Do you believe the Human Federation will send aid?" Jake met the Emperor's gaze without flinching. "They already offered, but their nearest fleet is 3 weeks away. Too far." Zephyr scoffed loudly. "Then what use are humans in this moment? Send him back to the diplomatic wing where he belongs." Jake's head turned slightly. A subtle movement, but it froze the room. Emperor Theros lifted a hand. Commander, enough. Jake stepped forward. If your majesty allows, he said, there may be another option. Lyra held her breath. The Emperor motioned for him to continue. Jake reached into his uniform and retrieved a small black communication module, one Lyra had never seen before. Sleek, cold, marked with no insignia. He pressed a sequence of buttons. The device emitted a soft harmonic pulse, then connected. Jake spoke rapidly in English, short phrases, coded call signs, numbers strung together with urgency but no fear. Everyone watched him like he was speaking to ghosts. The call lasted less than 2 minutes. When he ended it, the room felt different, as if he had just opened a door no one realized existed. Jake turned toward the Emperor. The 12, he said, can be here in 18 hours. The chamber erupted. Shouts, disbelief, outrage. Zephyr slammed a hand on the table. 12 soldiers? You want us to entrust our survival to a dozen humans. Jake didn't blink. They are not ordinary soldiers. Oh, Zephyr sneered. What are they? Wizards. Jake's voice didn't change volume, but it cut through the chaos like steel. They're the team humanity sends when entire civilizations are collapsing. If they come, you have a chance. The room went dead silent. The Emperor studied him. Slowly, deeply. What do you require? He asked. Jake exhaled. The decision already made. Access to your military command center, unrestricted. Authority to coordinate defensive strategy. And complete cooperation from your fleet. Zephyr exploded. Absurd! You want U.S. to hand over our military to humans. Jake didn't look at him. Handing it over won't be necessary. Just stop getting in the way. The older Valkyrie bristled, veins showing beneath his blue-tinted skin. You insolent. Lyra stepped between them before the moment could ignite further. Commander, she said coldly, perhaps we should consider the fact that our current strategy is failing. Zephyr inhaled sharply, but he didn't speak. The Emperor turned to his daughter. Do you believe the 12 are real? That they can do what he claims? Lyra thought of the sword glowing like a newborn star, of the man who moved like he'd carried 1,000 lives on his shoulders, of the quiet strength she had sensed but never understood. Yes, she whispered. I believe him. Theros nodded once. Very well, he said, voice steady. Prince Jake, send the signal. We will prepare the palace for their arrival. 18 hours later, the sky burned. 12 pods streaked across the atmosphere like falling meteors, silent, controlled, terrifying. They slammed into the palace courtyard with synchronized precision. Guards stumbled back, startled. When the pods opened, 11 figures stepped out, Jake's team. Lyra stood on the balcony above, breath trapped somewhere between awe and dread. These were not polished Valkyrie warriors. They were carved, scarred, hardened, purpose-shaped, armor black as starless void, swords glowing faintly at their backs, eyes that had seen too much and forgotten how to fear. One woman, tall, hair tied back, a long scar slashing down her left cheek, walked directly to Jake. Good to see you, brother, she said, gripping his shoulder. I wish it were under better circumstances. Lisa, Jake replied, returning the gesture. Thank you for coming. Lisa surveyed the palace with amused disdain. So this is a glorious empire we've heard so much about. She smirked. Let's hope they're ready to see how humans fight when we're done being polite. The other 11 chuckled quietly, with the ease of people who had killed together and nearly died together countless times. Jake turned toward the palace entrance, sword strapped to his back. For the first time since arriving on Valkyrie soil, he looked whole. Lyra realized something painful and true. He had never belonged in diplomatic halls or ceremonial robes. He belonged with them, the 12, warriors forged in the dark, weapons disguised as men and women. And now, they had come to save a civilization that had no idea how close it stood to annihilation. The palace courtyard was silent as the 12 assembled, weapons humming softly at their backs. They stood in a tight circle, speaking in low, clipped tones only they understood. Their movements were sharp, fluid, too precise to belong to ordinary soldiers. From the balcony, Lyra watched them with a strange sensation crawling beneath her skin. This wasn't a squad. This wasn't even an elite team. It was a storm wearing human faces. Jake stood among them with a posture she had never seen before, his shoulders squared, gaze sharpened, voice commanding. This wasn't the gentle diplomat who bowed during ceremonies and studied flowers. This was the real Jake, the man she had married but never truly met. Lisa Grant, tall, scarred, and radiating the aura of a predator, lifted her chin and addressed him. "Brief us. What is the situation?" Jake tapped the control on his wrist. A full holographic projection of the Krell fleet snapped into place above the courtyard. Hundreds of red markers swarming across Valkyrie space like a plague. "The Krell supremacy has spent years preparing," Jake said. "They've built new weapons, upgraded their shields, and trained specifically to counter Valkyrie psionics. Their strategy is efficient, too efficient for a coincidence. A massive, red cluster pulsed near the center. This is their main fleet," Jake continued. 2,000 ships, 500,000 ground troops, 12 worlds taken in 8 days. One of the 12, a bulky man with tattooed arms, whistled softly. "That's aggressive." Jake zoomed into 3 enormous icons, each representing a colossal vessel. "These are the command carriers. The entire fleet's coordination depends on them. If we take out these 3 ships, the Krell collapse into disorganized chaos." A smaller, sharp-eyed woman crossed her arms. "What's their interior layout?" "Dense," Jake replied, "but flawed. Their command centers are centralized, high risk, high reward." The tattooed man grinned. "So we crashed the nerve system. Old-fashioned decapitation strike." Lyra shuddered. "That wasn't a metaphor. Not with them." Lisa studied the hologram. "We'll need a Krell shuttle to get through their perimeter." "Already have one," Jake said. "Valkyrie captured it last week." Lisa nodded once. "Good. Then we split. Alpha takes the primary carrier. Beta hits the secondary. Charlie handles extraction." Her gaze sharpened. "Jake, since you know the Krell command structure best, you lead Alpha." Lyra inhaled sharply. Jake simply nodded. The rest of the 12 began checking their gear. No prayers, no rituals, no speeches. Just mechanical, efficient preparation. Grenades clipped, armor sealed, swords tested, each blade flaring with whispering blue fire. They were terrifying and magnificent. Jake left the courtyard and headed to the balcony where Lyra waited. His armor glinted with faint blue lines that pulsed like veins. "I need to speak with your father," he said. Lyra followed him into the war room. Valkyrie generals stood tense as the 12 entered. Some stared in awe, others with barely concealed resentment. Zephyr glared as though the humans were an insult carved into his honor. Jake walked directly to the tactical table. "We have a plan." He explained it, step by step, methodical, brutal, frighteningly achievable. When he finished, Zephyr erupted. "This is madness. One shuttle against thousands of ships? Human arrogance." Lisa stepped forward, slowly, until she stood inches from Zephyr. "We infiltrated the Zarek High Fleet 3 years ago," she said calmly. 15,000 ships. "No one has heard of the Zarek." Zephyr snapped. "Exactly," Lisa said with a small smile. "Because we erased them before they became a known threat." The room fell silent. Emperor Deros exhaled heavily. "Prince Jake, your estimated chance of success?" 60%, Jake said honestly. "But if we do nothing, the chance of Valkyrie survival is 0. Lyra felt her father's eyes on her. She swallowed. "Give them command authority," she said quietly. "Let them try." Zephyr blanched. "Princess." "Silence," Emperor Deros ordered. "The 12 have permission to proceed. Provide whatever they request." Jake bowed slightly. "Thank you, Your Majesty." At dawn, the captured Krell shuttle lifted off from the palace spaceport. Lyra stood in the command center, staring at the tactical screen. The tiny shuttle drifted toward the monstrous Krell fleet, broadcasting stolen identification codes. Valkyrie officers held their breath. If the Krell detected the deception, Jake and his team would die before they even landed. A long moment passed. Then, Clearance granted. The shuttle slid through the enemy ranks and into the hangar of the primary command carrier. Lyra exhaled shakily. The 12 emerged like shadows from the shuttle. Then their swords ignited, blue light scorching across the hangar walls. Valkyrie officers stared in horror as the screens filled with violence. The 12 moved like nothing Lyra had ever seen. Not soldiers, not assassins, predators. They cut through Krell's soldiers as if they were nothing, synchronized, silent, deadly. Entire squads fell in seconds. Jake's voice came through comms, calm even in chaos. Alpha team inside, moving toward the bridge. Beta and Charlie teams announced their positions as well. Secondary carrier infiltrated, tertiary ship disabled. Valkyrie officers nearly forgot to breathe as they watched the humans advance deeper. Then the feed shifted to a large intersection. 50 Krell warriors blocked the path, towering, armored, fully armed. This should have been a 30-minute battle. Alpha Team finished in 90 seconds. Jake led the push, graceful, unstoppable. His Sky Reaver car blew arcs through the air, breaking armor, turning enemies to ash. He didn't grunt, shout, or hesitate. He simply moved. Perfectly. Precision incarnate. Valkyrie officers whispered among themselves, horrified and amazed. Is he even human? Lyra didn't answer. She wasn't sure anymore. Alpha reached the final blast doors. The 6 drove their blades into the door simultaneously. Metal glowed white, then exploded inward. The bridge battle was chaos. Energy fire, Krell roars, the hum of reavers slicing through bone and armor. Then the Krell War Master lumbered into view, colossal, armored, wielding an electrified warhammer. The room tensed. Even Lyra's breath caught. Jake stepped forward alone. He held his blade at his side. Stand down, Lisa murmured through comms. He wants a duel. And Jake accepted. What followed was not a fight. It was a lesson. 90 seconds. Jake outmaneuvered, outthought, and outstruck the War Master. When the massive alien collapsed, the entire command center fell silent. Jake stepped over the body, activated the broadcast console, and spoke to the entire Krell fleet with terrifying calm. Your War Master is dead. Retreat now and you live. Continue forward and you will be destroyed. 5 minutes. That was all he gave them. And the galaxy would remember those minutes forever. For several long seconds, no one in the Valkyrie command center breathed. Jake stood in the bridge of the Krell flagship, blue light from his activated Sky Reaver painting him in an eerie glow. His message had gone out to every Krell vessel in the fleet, his calm voice echoing across enemy channels. A human challenging an empire conquerors and backing it with the corpse of their War Master. Now the galaxy waited. Admirals, officers, even Emperor Thero stared at the tactical display. The Krell fleet pulsed in red points of light, frozen in a moment of impossible indecision. For seconds, 10 seconds, 30, then a single Krell destroyer broke formation and jumped into hyperspace. Gasps filled the chamber. Another followed, then 3 more, then a dozen. Red light streaked off the map. They're retreating, someone whispered, barely believing it. But the moment of hope shattered when alarms flared again. A cluster of Krell ships, 300 of them, peeled away from the retreating group, their weapons powered up. Zephyr stiffened. Those are execution squadrons. They intend to die fighting. Jake's voice came through the comm system, steadier than stone. Lisa, he ordered, detonate the charges. In the secondary carrier, deep in the engineering deck, Beta Team armed the plasma cores and sprinted to extraction. Lisa tapped her wrist pad. A sun was born. The explosion tore through space, blinding, deafening, catastrophic. A dozen Krell vessels were consumed instantly. Others lost shields, spiraled out of control, or collided with fleeing ships. Valkyrie observers flinched as the shockwave expanded like a burning flower. But Jake didn't watch the explosion. He had already moved. Alpha Team stormed back to the flagship's corridors, cutting down any remaining guards. The Krell were in disarray, leaderless, panicking, some trying to surrender, others fighting blindly. Extraction point is compromised, Charlie Team reported. We have incoming hostiles on all sides. Jake didn't hesitate. New extraction plan, he said. We take a fighter. Alpha Team burst into a secondary hangar, where a fast attack Krell fighter sat warming on the deck. Dozens of Krell soldiers surrounded it, weapons raised. Jake pointed. That one. The 12 didn't waste breath acknowledging. They attacked with brutal efficiency. Blue arcs flashed as reaver blades sliced through armor. Jake moved like a phantom, sliding under plasma fire, rising into lethal strikes, ending enemies before they could scream. The last soldier fell. They sprinted into the fighter, barely big enough for all of them. Jake jumped into the pilot's seat. Hold on. The engine screamed as he ripped the fighter from the hangar, blasting into open space. Krell ships fired wildly, beams cutting across the darkness. Jake weaved through them with impossible precision. Lisa gripped the chair behind him. You've gotten rusty. Jake snorted. This is me being gentle. Back in the command center, Lyra stood frozen, watching the tiny blue icon representing Jake's craft dart through hostile fire. Her nails dug into her palms. Come on, she whispered. Come on. Then, a Valkyrie cruiser opened its hangar bay. Charlie Team's leader radioed. We see you, Alpha. Bring her home. Jake throttled the engines, guiding the fighter into the docking lane. Sparks erupted as the ship scraped the deck, sliding hard across the surface. And stopped. Alive. All 12 survived. Valkyrie admirals exhaled collectively as though remembering how to breathe. The battle was not yet over. The remaining Krell ships, scattered and leaderless, attempted a final desperate assault, but without coordination, their attacks were sloppy and misguided. Valkyrie ships, reinvigorated by hope, formed a surrounding formation. Apply pressure. Jake ordered over comms. Force them toward the debris field. Don't give them space to regroup. Commander Zephin, for once, obeyed without argument. Valkyrie beams lit up the void. Missiles streaked across space. Enemy shields cracked. Krell cruisers faltered. Bit by bit, their line collapsed. Some fled. Most died. Within 6 hours, the terrifying Krell supremacy fleet, once thought unstoppable, was shattered. The impossible had been achieved, because 12 humans had walked into the heart of the enemy and broken it apart from within. When Jake returned to the palace courtyard with the rest of the 12, the air filled with cheers from soldiers, nobles, servants, everyone who dared come close. But Jake didn't celebrate. Lyra didn't wait for formalities. She ran to him, ignoring protocol, ignoring the entire court. She threw her arms around him. I thought I lost you, she whispered into his armor. He held her, his hand trembling slightly. I told you, we've seen worse. Lisa smirked as she walked past. Let the hero have his moment. We need food, medkits, and 8 hours unconscious. The Emperor descended the palace steps with slow, regal gravity. He approached the 12, his eyes shining with awe and gratitude. You saved my empire, Thoreau said. Name your reward, anything I can grant. Lisa stepped forward. We don't need riches or titles, but humanity needs allies, equals, not subjects, not admirers, partners. Thoreau hesitated. Valkyrie pride was ancient, deeply rooted, unyielding. Could he grant what she asked? His gaze fell on Jake and Lyra, standing together, tired yet unbroken. Finally, Thoreau spoke. Yes, from this day, Valkyrie and Human Federation stand as equals, bound by cooperation, not hierarchy. The 12 bowed. Lisa looked at Jake. Your assignment here is finished, she said softly. If you want to come home, there's always a place for you. Jake looked at her, then at Lyra, then at the cheering crowds. His decision was immediate. No, he said, my place is here. I made vows. I intend to keep them. Lisa smiled faintly. I expected that. Celebrations erupted across the Valkyrie homeworld like cascading waves of light. Cities illuminated their sky towers. Children released telekinetic lanterns into the night. Entire districts chanted the names of the 12 as though they were myth reborn. And yet, Jake Morrison did not attend a single celebration. While fireworks painted the sky in brilliant blues and golds, he sat alone beneath a tree in the palace gardens, the earth oak gifted to him during his wedding. Its leaves rustled with familiar earth-like whisper, soft, warm, grounding. Lyra found him sitting with his elbows on his knees, eyes unfocused, expression distant. "The Empire wants to see you," she said gently. "People call you a hero." Jake didn't look up. "I'm not a hero," he whispered. Lyra blinked. "Jake, you saved millions." Jake finally lifted his eyes. What she saw inside them chilled her. Guilt, weariness, memories soaked in blood. "I did what had to be done," he said softly. "But that doesn't make me noble. It makes me necessary." He exhaled slowly, the weight of years pressing down on his shoulders. "You know what most people never understand?" he continued. "The 12 don't exist to win glory. We exist to do the things people don't want to think about." Lyra sat beside him, letting the silence stretch before she spoke. "What things, Jake?" He stared at the tree leaves swaying gently. "Things that won't ever make it into history books. Things done in the dark so others can live in the light." Lyra felt a knot form in her chest. She knew this wasn't the time to ask for details. Some wounds were carved too deep. "Tell me about the 12, she said softly. "Tell me how you became this." Jake closed his eyes. "I was 17 when I enlisted, 18 when I was selected. The training broke 90% of us. I watched friends collapse, break, give up, but those who remained were changed." He rubbed his thumb against his palm, a habit Lyra had never noticed before, one he probably picked up under extreme duress. "We learned to fight in zero gravity, in toxic atmospheres, in darkness. We learned to make impossible choices without hesitation, to kill quickly, quietly, efficiently." His voice lowered. "Some missions I don't want to remember, but they were necessary. I kept people safe. That's the only thing that matters now." Lyra reached for his hand. His fingers rough with calluses she had always assumed came from martial training. Now she knew better. "You're more than what they made you," she said softly. "You're not a weapon, Jake." His lips twisted in a sad half-smile. "A weapon that chooses peace is still a weapon, Lyra. I'm just not ready to hang up the blade completely." The weeks that followed changed the Valkyrie Empire forever. Emperor Theros announced a new treaty with humanity, one cemented not by politics, but by blood shared on a battlefield. Predictably, noble houses erupted with outrage. Humans cannot be equals. Their civilization is too young. This alliance insults our history. But the people disagreed. They had seen Krell ships burning in the skies. They had seen the 12 walk among them like guardians forged in fire. They had watched Jake Morrison, once considered unremarkable, stand against a war master and win. The old pride of Valkyrie's supremacy cracked. A new era began. Young Valkyrie flooded recruitment centers. They begged to be trained like humans, disciplined, resilient, unpredictable. Jake resisted at first. "I'm not a drill sergeant," he protested. "I'm not built for teaching." Lyra smiled softly. "You taught me, every day without even trying." And so Jake agreed. His training program was brutal. The first day, half the recruits quit. By the end of the first week, half of those remaining collapsed from exhaustion. Valkyrie soldiers had always relied on innate psionics, letting their abilities do half their work. Jake stripped that away. "No powers," he announced. "Strength and clarity come first." They ran drills in intense gravity chambers. They learned to fight blindfolded. They learned to function with limited oxygen, limited time, and zero comfort. Many cursed his name. Many quit. But the ones who stayed transformed. Even Commander Zephin, once Jake's loudest critic, volunteered to join the training. Jake watched him quietly at first, waiting to see if the old commander would fold. But Zephin endured. Every bruise, every blow, every correction. One night after sparring, the older Valkyrie approached Jake, breathing heavily, sweat matting his hair against his temples. "I misjudged you," Zephin said quietly. "I mistook discipline for weakness, gentleness for softness." He lowered his head slightly. "I was wrong." Jake nodded. "We all learn." It was not forgiveness. It was understanding. As months passed, the new Valkyrie Combat Corps began to take shape, stronger, faster, grounded in both human discipline and Valkyrie psionic refinement. Human advisors arrived from Earth, surprised to find Jake alive, married, and leading a bi-species military revolution. Lyra watched him from balconies, from council seats, from quiet shadow corners. She saw the duality within him. The warrior who'd carved his name into war, and the gentleman who kissed her forehead before he left for training. One night, she asked him the question she'd avoided for months. Which one are you, Jake? The warrior or the diplomat? Jake paused, then smiled with weary honesty. I don't know anymore. Maybe both. Maybe neither. He took her hand. When I'm fighting, everything is simple. Clear. But peace is complicated. It takes more strength to build than to destroy. I'm trying to learn that. Lyra squeezed his fingers gently. You're doing better than you think. He didn't argue. For once, he let peace win. 1 year later, a universal broadcast was made. Humans and Valkyrie signed the Treaty of Equal Alliance, an agreement that would reshape the galaxy for centuries. Jake and Lyra stood side by side during the ceremony, symbols of unity forged through conflict and love. Afterward, Lisa Grant approached Jake, her scar catching the light. You look civilian, she teased. Jake laughed softly. I feel it. How's the team? He asked. The same, Lisa said. 3 classified missions. 3 successes. She studied him. Do you regret staying? Jake looked at Lyra, radiant, proud, strong. Not for a second. Lisa nodded, expression warm. Sometimes the hardest battle is choosing peace. You're doing well, brother. 2 years passed in quiet transformation. The Valkyrie Empire, once rigid and proud, evolved with surprising speed. Human advisors worked alongside Valkyrie tacticians. Joint academies opened in orbit, where young cadets from both species sparred, studied, and built a future neither civilization could have predicted. Jake Morrison, once a ghost hidden inside diplomatic robes, became the heart of this new era. He trained warriors. He designed new protocols. He guided the council through decisions that once would have been unthinkable. But to Lyra, he was simply Jake, her husband, her partner, the man who held her hand when politics grew heavy and laughed with her during late-night walks through the gardens. Then their son was born, a child with soft gray eyes like Jake, but skin carrying the shimmering iridescence of Valkyrie lineage, the first hybrid of his kind, a living symbol of unity. Jake held him a mixture of awe and terror, as if afraid the universe was playing a joke on him. What should we call him? Lyra asked. Jake stared at the baby for a long time. He thought of the endless battlefields, the broken worlds, the choices that haunted him. He thought of all the shadows he had lived in and the light he finally found. Nathan, Jake said at last. It means gift. Lyra smiled. Nathan it is. Jake kissed the child's forehead. Nathan giggled. An innocent sound Jake had never heard in all his years of war. Something inside him softened, maybe healed. The Sky Reaver still hung on his wall. Jake never touched it, never took it down, never activated it again. But some nights, when the palace was quiet and the stars shimmered through the balcony glass, Lyra found him standing before the sword, staring at it the way one stares at a memory too sharp to hold. She approached gently. Do you miss it? Jake didn't pretend to misunderstand. I miss the clarity, he said. War strips life down to one truth. Survive. Everything feels simple when you're fighting. He shook his head slowly. But peace requires patience, forgiveness, negotiation. It's harder, more complicated. Lyra touched his arm. You're better at it than you think. He smiled faintly. I'm trying. His gaze drifted to Nathan's room, where soft baby sounds echoed through the halls. I want to grow up in a world where he never has to hold a weapon like that, Jake whispered. Then we'll build it together, Lyra said. But the galaxy, even at peace, always whispered threats. Rumors spread of pirate guilds uniting under a single banner. A rogue AI collective resurfacing beyond map space. A distant empire testing forbidden technology. Peace was real, but fragile. One evening, While Jake reviewed joint military reports, Lyra found him looking unusually serious. "What is it?" she asked. "Intel from the frontier." Jake said quietly, "Something is stirring. Something old." Lyra's heart clenched. "Do you think it will reach us?" Jake closed the holo display. "Eventually," he said. "Trouble always does." Lyra stepped closer. "And when it comes?" Jake placed his hand over hers. "Then we'll face it together. Humans and Valkyrie. Stronger than we were before." His voice softened. "And if needed, the 12 will answer the call." Lyra's breath caught. "Would you return to them?" Jake shook his head. "No, my place is here. But I know this much. The 12 don't abandon the fight." He gazed toward the darkened hallway where their son slept. "And neither do I." Weeks drifted into months. Jake evolved into more than a warrior or prince. He became a teacher, a diplomat, a strategist, a father. His presence was felt across both empires. Recruits trained under his methods became legends in their own right. Human-Valkyrie alliances deepened. Joint policies flourished. And still, the Sky Reaver hung in silent patience. One night, as rain fell softly over the palace gardens, Lyra found Jake lost in thought again, standing before the sword. This time, he turned before she could speak. "I used to think this blade defined me," Jake murmured, "that everything I was came from what it made me do. And now," Lyra whispered. Jake reached out, not to take the weapon, but to close the case over it, to cover the glowing panels, to dim the memories. "Now I understand something I never did before," he said. "The sword didn't make me strong. It didn't make me dangerous." He turned to her with a soft, steady gaze. "You did." Lyra blinked. "Me?" "You gave me something worth protecting," Jake said. "Something more powerful than skill or training." He stepped closer, touching her cheek lightly. "Purpose." The word vibrated between them. Lyra felt tears prick her eyes. She wrapped her arms around him, resting her head against his chest. "And you gave our entire world something we never had," she said. "Perspective, humility, strength without arrogance." Jake exhaled slowly, holding her close. "Then maybe we saved each other." As they stood together, the sky cleared. A streak of light crossed the heavens. Neither starship nor meteor, just the universe whispering its endless stories. Nathan cried from the next room, a soft wail demanding attention. Jake chuckled. "Looks like duty calls." "Different kind of battlefield," Lyra teased. Jake kissed her forehead. "One I'm finally ready for." They walked away from the sword together, toward their child, toward their future, toward a peace they had fought hard to earn. Behind them, the Sky Reaver remained on the wall, silent, dormant, waiting, not as a symbol of violence, but as a reminder of what had been sacrificed to build this fragile, precious peace. And though Jake Morrison was once a weapon forged in war, he had become something far greater, a guardian, a leader, a bridge between worlds, a father, a man who chose peace over glory, and in doing so, reshaped the destiny of two empires.